We all want to be paid what we are worth. And today I'm going to show you exactly how you can do that. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Peter Czapp, and this presentation is 17 years in the making because 17 years ago, myself and my business partner, Paul, co-founded the Wow Company. We are an accountancy practice that specializes in working with agencies. And if you are wondering what it is like to work with an accountancy practice that specializes in working with agencies, well, the next hour is going to give you some really interesting insights into what that is like. In fact, I'd love for you to spend the next hour wondering whether your accountant talks to you about these sorts of things, thinking about whether your accountant really understands agencies like we understand agencies. And if the answer is no, then we'd love to chat to you after this. I said this presentation is 17 years in the making because I'm taking all of the experiences from the last 17 years of working with some incredible agencies and seeing their accounts, seeing the numbers behind these businesses, and also talking to them and talking to agencies in a community that I set up 7 or 8 years ago, the Agency Collective. Now, this has grown to become the most wonderful community. We've got over 600 agency owners in that, and it is the best peer-to-peer support community in the world. These agency owners get together to help solve each other's challenges, listen to some incredible content, and come together to win new business, support each other in this wonderful challenge of running an agency. I'm also going to be sharing insights from Bench Press. Bench Press started off in 2012 as a humble survey of 100 agency owners, and that's now grown into the largest survey of independent agency owners in the UK. We have some incredible data that has powered a lot of the insights I'll be sharing with you today. And thanks to these guys, MailChimp & Co., we have now taken Bench Press global. So this year, 2021, was the first year that we took Bench Press global. We have insights from agencies all over the world, 2,000 of them. And for those of you not familiar with MailChimp & Co., it's a wonderful community set up by the guys at MailChimp to help you get more from your email marketing. It's free to join, and by joining, you'll be able to access a load of great content and events and tips and tools, as well as other people who are also trying to get more from their email marketing. Whether that's for yourself or for your clients, I definitely encourage you to take a look at it. Now, the theme that has run through all of our work is profitability and sustainability. And if you'd like to get access to some of those insights, you can download this year's report. If you go to wowco.uk/benchpress 2021, and that link is going to appear in the chat, then you'll be able to access this year's reports, both the UK ones and the global ones. And I'm really excited to be able to bring those to you. I know it's inspired lots of people to change things in their agencies, and I hope it inspires you to change some things positively in your agency too. Now, I said that that link would appear in the chat. The chat and the Q&A, in fact, let's put all questions in the Q&A. If you've got any questions, then please go to the Q&A, and Rory will be joining me later. Rory Spence, who I work with at Wow, and I'll be covering all of the questions. So this is a live event, it's interactive. And as we say every time, we will stay right to the very end in order to answer all of your questions. I said the theme that runs through all of our work is helping you build profitable and sustainable agencies. And that's really important to me because profitability has often, or profit has often been a dirty word. It's been associated with big businesses making big profits so that fat cat executives can take home huge bonuses. And that's not what profit's about for us. And for all of us listening here today, profit is about being able to sleep well at night. Profit is about being able to invest in your team. It's being able to take a long-term approach to the growth of your business. It's about building a sustainable business, and profit has to be right at the center of that. Now, we've been doing research for nearly a decade now that has shown us that there is a correlation between the price that we all charge and the profit that we make. This has never gone away. It's always been the case. The more you charge, generally speaking, the more profit that you're going to make. And that's why today's so important. I'm going to show you exactly how you can increase your prices that will lead to greater profitability and therefore greater sustainability for your agency. I'll be taking you through 7 strategies to help you do this. Now, some of these will be new. Some of these you will have heard before. and some of which you'll already be doing. But I promise you that every single one of these 7 strategies, there is the next level for. And I want you to discover or challenge yourself is what the next level is for you. So each strategy that I'll be presenting, I'll be sharing examples and case studies. And I just want you to think, okay, am I doing this? Am I not doing this? And if I am doing this, what's the next level? And if I can help you get to that next level, then all of our businesses will be more profitable. So the first strategy. Actually, before I take you through the first strategy, just to remind us of the landscape of how we all price at the moment, this is a slide taken from our 2021 bench press report that looks at exactly how agencies price. And you'll see that the majority of agencies, 87%, use fixed pricing, so agree a scope of work up front, including a fixed fee. And all 7 of the strategies they'll be talking about today apply to fixed pricing, but they also apply to varying degrees to the other ones. So whether you use time and materials or an agile approach, or even really encouragingly, as the 23% of agencies are doing, using a value-based approach, or even performance or licensing models, these 7 strategies apply to all of these, but particularly apply to those who use fixed pricing. So let's get cracking. The very first strategy is this. If you want to increase your prices, just increase your prices. Now, if you're expecting innovative thinking and the latest research and groundbreaking thoughts, well, that's coming later on. But I want to start with the basics here, because every single person, and I mean this sincerely, every single person listening to this, you can increase your prices today, right this moment, and it will have little or no impact on your conversion rate. Now, how much you can increase your prices without changing anything else will depend on a few factors, and I'll come to those later. But I've seen so many examples of agencies who have just simply gone on a journey of increasing their prices from an hourly rate that's currently below average, moving it to average and then above average. And as a starting point for you, I want you to think about this. The reason this is important to increase your prices and to do it regularly is because two things. First of all, your costs are all going up. In a typical year, you're going to be increasing the salaries of your team. Your other costs, your supplier costs, if you have offices, those are going to be going up as well. And in a typical year, your costs are going up. If you don't increase prices, your margins are going to get squeezed. You're going to be working just as hard for less money. The other reason to do this is you're better now than you were 6 months ago, and certainly better than you were 3 years ago. Just think about how much you have improved individually, how much your team have improved, how much better people that you now have. You are so much better at what you do now than you were a year ago, and therefore you should charge more for it. How much more you can get away with, well, that depends on certainly strategies 2 and 3 that are coming up in a second. But just as a rough guide, I just want to show you where you sit if you use a blended hourly rate. So we publish results for agencies over and under £1 million here. And for agencies under £1 million, the average hourly rate is £86 an hour. For agencies above £1 million fee income, it's 103. Now, if you are below those, without question, you can increase your hourly rates to at least get up to average, and it will have little or no impact on your conversion rate. If you're above these, there's no reason why you can't do this anyway, because I've seen basically, especially if you start with your prospects, right? Think about your prospects for a second and think about your conversion rate, right? These are the conversion rates for agencies. So conversion rates from proposal to client. And on the left-hand side, you can see the conversion rates between 1 and 20%, 21 and 40%, so on and so on, all the way up to 99% conversion rate. And on the right, I'm just going to be sharing the percentages of agencies that fall into each of these categories. So you can see, there's a few agencies that have very low conversion rates, under 20%. A big chunk sit between 21 and 40. But I'd say for the rest of you guys, anyone that's above 40% conversion rate, you have the ability to increase your prices significantly. And certainly I'd say if you're above 60% conversion rate, so 26% of agencies, you're too cheap. You're too cheap. I remember chatting to someone at a networking event when we could do networking events. It was an agency collective event, him and his business partner. And one of the business partners he was really proud of the fact that he had an 80% conversion rate. And I remember, and his business partner was saying, no, look, we're too cheap. And he was right. They were too cheap. If you've got a really high conversion rate, and certainly that applies to 26% of people, you should definitely be increasing your rates without fail. But I think you should be increasing your rates anyway. And it might be that if you can't increase them across the board, you can focus on an underpriced service. So there will almost certainly be something that you do that is disproportionately highly valued by your clients. And just think about what that might be for a second. What is it amongst your services that you offer that you could increase the price on and it have almost no impact on your conversion rate? I'd be really interested for you to explore that. And if nothing, just hopefully something's just popped into your head. You think, well, actually, yeah, there is this thing that we do really, really well. Our clients really value it. That's the thing that we're going to do to increase, or that's the area that we're going to increase our hourly rates on. And when you do this, I said before, start with prospects because they have no knowledge of what you've charged previously. You can charge what you want. I've got so many case studies of people starting off. I remember chatting to one agency. I mean, this was a while back and it's an extreme example. I accept that, but their hourly rate was £40 an hour. I said, look, this is ridiculous. You guys are really talented. And I managed to persuade them to increase it to 50. That's as high as I could get them to go. And they came back a month later and said, no one batted an eyelid. So we increased it to £60 an hour. A month later, yeah, everyone's accepted it. No one's batted an eyelid. And that phrase, no one's batted an eyelid, is repeated time and time again every time we tried it. We took their hourly rate from £40 to £100 an hour without changing a single thing in their business. Sorry, it was to 90. It was to £40 to £90 an hour without changing a single thing in their business. To get from 90 to 120, we had to change some stuff. And I'll tell you about the two specific things we changed. They're coming up in a second to help them go from 90 to £120 an hour. But your prospects right now, they have no knowledge of what you charged last week, last month, last year. So you can charge whatever you want. I've got so many other examples of agencies increasing their pricing. And what always makes me smile, and and please share your stories if this happens to you. If you do this and quote to your clients, what I love is that people are surprised when the clients don't bat an eyelid and they come back and say, oh my goodness, they didn't bat an eyelid. And I say, yeah, I told you so. And that makes me smile. And I'd love for you to run these experiments, go and pitch these higher prices to your prospects and come and tell me what happens. Because I promise you, they will not bat an eyelid. So start with prospects, but don't forget your existing customers, because if you're good at this, right, you're going to be increasing your clients for your prices for your prospects, but your existing clients could potentially get left behind. And so it's important that you review your pricing for your existing clients regularly as well and seek to edge that up. A lot of agencies forget to do this. Now, lots of ways you can do this. I remember speaking to one agency owner who had 20 clients and she just emailed them all and said, look, she actually did something quite clever. She said, our prices are going up from, she did it towards the end of the year, from the 1st of January. We haven't increased them for a while. They're going up to this. If you would like to buy a block of or any projects at the current rate, you've got 3 months to do that. So she gave them 3 months. A few of those clients came back and said, actually, yeah, can we squeeze in a project at the old rate? So that was quite nice. She got a load of work brought forward. And one out of the 20 said, I'm not working with the new rates. And she was really happy about that because they were a pain in the neck. But 19 accepted it. She gave them notice. And I think, that was quite brave, emailing 20 clients. Another way of doing it, if you're able to do a personal touch, I do favor the conversation that goes something like this, where you sit down with a client and say, look, you're currently paying this. If you're a new client now, you'd be paying this. How would you feel about closing that gap? And by saying that, how would you feel about closing that gap? You're not forcing it upon them. You're not telling them that you're going to do this. You're just exploring together. Look, we're here. We should be there. How do you feel about closing that gap? And you can have a conversation around it. Look, the worst that happens is the client says, look, we can't budge. We've got to stick with what we've got. And then you've got a decision to make. Do you want to keep with that client, or are you going to say goodbye to them and free up space? And eventually, if you're really good at increasing your prices, you're going to get some old legacy clients on really old fees that you're going to be really happy to say goodbye to because it frees up space for new clients. So have a think about your strategy for existing clients, whether you're going to be emailing them, giving them notice, or whether you're going to be having those personal conversations. But I promise you, it's a no-lose gamble. The worst that comes out of it is that you've had a conversation with a client, you stick on the current rate. That's the worst that can happen. Everything else is a bonus. Either they go to the full rate or you meet somewhere in the middle. Those are the conversations we need to be having with our clients. And we need to do this regularly. every 6 months, we need to be reviewing our prices and making sure that we're edging them up and edging them up. It's really important to do. If you're a young agency in the first 2 years, you probably need to do this every 3 months, because you're going to be learning and growing and changing and hiring, hopefully, and improving your capability. And so every 3 months, but certainly for the more mature businesses, every six months, we should be doing this regularly. So the other thing that will help, by the way, is the benchmark report, particularly if you have to negotiate with procurement departments. So I get loads of emails from agency owners just prior to the report's publication in March saying, oh, I've got a meeting with the procurement department. Can I have the latest stats? And I'm sorry, you're going to have to wait till the report comes out. But I know when it does come out, they go to these procurement departments with the benchmarks and say, hey, let's have a look at how we're performing. And in this year's report, we looked at hourly rates for each level of expertise for juniors, mid-level, seniors, and directors. And we published rates for the top 10%, top 25, average, and bottom 25. And you can access this, hand this to your procurement department negotiator and say, hey, these are the rates that the agencies are charging out there. And here's the thing, here's what you need to focus on. This is what the top 10% are charging, anything from £99 an hour for juniors to $240 for directors. We are a top 10% agency. So instead of benchmarking ourselves against the average, I want you to benchmark ourselves against this. And they're using this as a weapon against procurement departments. So my gift to all of you agencies out there, go and download this report and take it to your procurement department the next time they're talking to you about your rates. This will really, really help. So to be in that top 10%, there's a couple of things that you will need to do. The second strategy to increase your pricing, coupled with the first one, is you will need to win bigger clients. There's absolutely no question about this. And by bigger clients, what I actually really mean is you need bigger clients with bigger budgets, because when we've done our research into the top 10% of agencies by profitability, this is what we discovered. The traits of the top 10%, the first thing we noticed was this: 65% of this top 10% by profitability had one project in excess of $250,000 versus a 19% average. So I'll let you digest that stat for a second. So on average, roughly 1 in 5 agencies has won a project in excess of $250,000. But amongst the most profitable, that rises to nearly 2/3 have won a project. I think that's really interesting. The other trait around the top percent by profitability is they had a minimum project value of greater than 10 grand. So they didn't get out of bed pretty much for less than 10 grand, because here's the thing, they understood that faffing around at the small end, the small projects, is really hard to make money. It's really hard to make money. An agency owner described it to me beautifully. She said, look, a £250,000 project for us is not 10 times the amount of work of a 25 grand project. And a 25 grand project isn't 10 times the amount of work of a 2.5 grand project. It gets easier with scale. And if you are scrapping around at the 2.5 grand project end, oh my goodness, by the time you've even pitched or written a proposal to win the work and done the initial meeting, got to know the client and done the scope and issued the invoices and chased the invoices, you can't make any money on that. And you've not really even done any work. So we all need to raise our game here. And I talked to you about the agency that went from £40 to £90 an hour without changing a single thing. They didn't change a single thing. The bit that took them from 90 to 120 was their focus on clients. And another thing that's coming up in a minute, but they focused on bigger clients. They went from designing local websites for local people to working with brands. And that's what propelled them to the next level in terms of their pricing. And that's the only way to get there. You will hit a ceiling when you're working with smaller people or smaller businesses with smaller budgets. There's absolutely no question about it. You need to find a way to win those step change deals to work with bigger clients on bigger budgets. There is one wee caveat to this, in that there will come a point for some of you that bigger isn't necessarily better, okay? And it's probably best illustrated by a conversation I had with an agency owner who had worked out their sweet spot when it came to project size. And what this agency owner discovered was they were best at digital transformation projects between 20 and 50 grand. They said anything less than 20 grand wasn't worth the hassle, but actually anything more I think they did $100,000 project, and it was really technical, and they got found out. They didn't have the technical expertise. They didn't want to build a team of that technical expertise. And so it actually cost them a lot of money. They learned their lesson, and they said, look, this is what we're awesome at. This is where we can really add value. We can charge disproportionately for that value and make the most profit. So they found their sweet spot. I guess my question to you is, where is your sweet spot? Now, what I can promise you this is, it's not going to be in amongst those low value ones. So we all need to raise our games to that minimum threshold. I guess what the caveat around these larger £250,000 projects is they might not be for you if you don't have the expertise to fulfill them. You might drop down a bit, but I promise you, you're not going to be in the top 10% by profitability if you're faffing around with small projects. That I can absolutely guarantee. I've got the data to back it up. So I said there was another thing that we need to do alongside increased prices to get into the real upper echelons of the pricing matrix. The first thing was find bigger clients. The next thing is to specialize and get niche. Now, I talk about this a lot, and I've got a really interesting case study in the next slide that I've never shared before that I think is really cool and will really get you thinking about what the next level is for you. So just to talk a little bit about each of these. So specializing is making sure that you do something very, very specific, very, very well. So rather than saying, look, we do all aspects of marketing, you can say, look, we focus just on SEO, or we focus on just on Facebook ads, or we focus on, this particular area of video production. And the more specialized you can get, the higher price you can charge. There's absolutely no question about it. All the data backs it up. All the stories I've seen, the more specialized you can get, the more you can charge. Now, niching is around focusing on a particular market sector. So we work really well with this group of people. We work really well with insurance companies. We work really well with sports brands. We work really well with travel companies, whatever it is your niche. Now you can, and there's lots of them that specialize in a particular area and do that for a specific niche. And this next case study is an agency that did do exactly that. And I want to take you through their journey, and with an interesting endpoint, a really interesting endpoint, because not only were they able to charge more throughout their journey as they got more specialized and more niche, there was an interesting end to this journey, which I'll tell you about in a second. So let me take you through this case study. On the left-hand side, I'm going to talk you through their journey in terms of their specialism. On the right-hand side, I'll take you through their journey in terms of the niche. So they started off, as a lot of people do, they started off as a marketing agency, and they did that for pretty much anyone. And in the early days, this will sound familiar, by the way, they just took any jobs that they could. When someone said, can you do this? They'd say yes. And they'd do it for anyone. And they just took the jobs on to pay the bills. And we've all been there. I started WOW from scratch, and there were plenty of times where someone would say in the early days, can you do this? And we'd think, crikey, that's a bit of a stretch, but we'd say yes, and we'd find a way. And we soon learned that actually that's not the smartest thing to do. And like this agency, they decided I think they naturally evolved into specialism. So they became well known for their PR and comms and started focusing on that. And they decided to start doing that for brands. So larger businesses, they moved out of the small business community and up into brands. They then realized they were really good at internal comms. And so they started focusing on internal comms. And what they noticed was it was much easier for them if they worked on internal comms campaigns for brands that had 5,000 plus employees. So that was their minimum threshold. That was their thing. They did internal comms for 5,000 plus employee brands. They then got even more, you're thinking, well, that's a pretty specialized agency focusing on a very particular niche. It got even more interesting. Under a thread of internal comms, they discovered there was a well of opportunities around employee benefits comms. So brands having to communicate to their teams all of the benefits that they get as part of being an employee and managing those schemes and all of that. And they discovered that they were particularly good at this, and there was a lot of comms required for highly regulated industries. So suddenly they're getting even more specialized. They're doing employee benefit comms for highly regulated industries. You're thinking, well, that you can't get any more specialist or niche than that. Well, they did. They then went into a strand of employee benefit comms, which was pension comms. And they did that for financial services companies. And that's where they ended up. They ended up with a £6 million fee income business, which was doing pension communications for financial services companies. They had a 1.2 million pound, let's get this right. No, so they had a 1.5 million pound EBIT profit at the end of it. And they sold that business for an 8 times multiple. So they sold it for 12 million pounds. And as well as pricing at a higher level than all of their competitors, because to be frank, they didn't really have any competitors. When you're a company that specializes in pension communications, internal pension communications for financial services company, you don't have any competition. You can charge what you want. You are the best in the world at this. They charged what they want. They made good profit, and they sold for an 8 times multiple. Now that 8 times multiple, this was a little while ago now. In the last 6 months, I've had agencies, our clients have sold, one of our clients sold for 9.5 times multiple. One of our clients sold for 9 times multiple. Both those cases, they were specialist and they were niche. They did a certain thing for a certain market. And my challenge to all of you listening to this is, what is the next level for you, right? So I'm really hoping that there's no one at the top level just doing marketing for anyone, right? I'm really hoping that we've moved beyond that, and everyone listening to this has a specialism and is starting to focus in a niche. But my challenge to you is, what is the next level? Because each level that you go down is an opportunity for you to charge more. And the more you charge, the more profit you make, the more specialist the niche you get, the more valuable your business becomes. These are the prizes that are available for those who are brave enough to make these moves. Now you can see that this is a journey. They didn't jump from step 1 to, the final point on this at the bottom in one go. It was a journey. What is the next step on the journey for you? What can you do tomorrow? Or what can you start? Or where do you want to be by the end of this year? That is the next step on your journey. That is my challenge for you to think about. And I wish you well on your journey. It will lead to higher prices. Now, I've taken you through 3 strategies so far. We have a few more. The next one is to encourage you to move to tiered pricing. So tiered pricing is, I guess, the alternative to a blended hourly rate. So with a blended hourly rate, you have a single rate for all the people in your business. So you charge them all out at £83 an hour or £100 an hour or whatever it is. When you move to tiered pricing, you charge each member of your team out at a different hourly rate. So if you think back to that matrix I had earlier, you had juniors, mid-level, seniors, and directors. They were all charged out at different hourly rates. That is what tiered pricing is. And not enough people are doing it. Let me tell you how many people are doing it. 49% of £1 million plus agencies are doing it. So just under half, and only 27% of agencies under £1 million are doing it. Now, I reckon that after you hear these stats coming up, a few more will do it. But I understand the reason why people don't go for tiered pricing, because a single blended rate is easy, right? It's easy to work out. It's not too complicated. You work out the hours on the job, you times it by the hours, by the hourly rate, and that gives you certainly a starting point. We'll come on to value pricing in a second, but that certainly gives you a starting point to work out how much you should charge and how much this is going to cost you. But of course, each of those inputs, each of those people, they don't cost you the same amount of money. Your juniors, you're paying less than your senior people. And in fact, let's look at another way. Your senior people can add more value to clients, therefore they should be charged more. So I definitely see the appeal, and certainly in the early days, of having a single hourly rate because it's simple. But when you see these stats, you will hopefully conclude that it is worth the effort to move to tiered pricing. So this is what the top 10% charge for each level of expertise. Now, just think about that for a second. Think about what you charge. If you're on a blended hourly rate, think about your blended hourly rate, and then just look at what is available to you if you can move to tiered pricing and move up to the top 10%. They don't charge anyone out less than £99 an hour, and the directors are at 234. Unbelievable. What is also unbelievable is the impact that this will have on your gross profit percentage. So we looked at our data from this year's report. We split it into 2 groups, and we said, right, let's look at the gross profit percentage of those that use tiered pricing and those that use blended rates. And here are the results. So if you use a blended hourly rate, the average gross profit percentage you make is 39%. Now, I calculate, and I encourage you to calculate gross profit percentage in a very particular way that I've explained in the report. And there's a 6-minute tutorial video in the report that you can check it out. So if you use that method, then the average for those that use blended rates is 39%. If you're using tiered pricing, the average is 48% gross profit. Do I need to say any more? Do I really need to give you any more encouragement to move away from a blended rate and to think about tiered pricing? Just look, it's there in black and white. 9 percentage points of additional profit that you could make. This is what is available. And it's only marginal extra effort. I appreciate it's extra effort, but I think those stats tell you it's worth it. Now, if you're sat there thinking, well, crikey, where do I start? You know, I've got a team of 20 or 30. How on earth do I start categorizing them? Well, look, a lot of these things are a journey, right? We're not going to crack this overnight. A great way to start with this is just think about your very senior people and almost having 2 rates, if you like, and saying, look, we're going to keep people at our standard rate, but we're going to have a premium rate for either the premium work or where we're charging our senior people out. And that is the way that you start with this, and you always move higher. And actually, when you're cutting up your rates, this is a really good opportunity to maybe anchor your lowest rates, your junior rates, to your current rates. So everything is above that. So if you want a simple place to start, rather than thinking, God, I've got to have 4 tiers or 5 or 6, start with 2. Come up with 1 premium tier and see how you get on with that. Go on a journey with this and then see where you end up. You've got the stats, you've got the benchmarks, you know what other people are doing, and you know what you're capable of. So let's go on that journey together. Step 5, really important one. I've got another cracking case study coming up for you that will show you how to do this. But a really simple way that you can increase your pricing and the amount that clients buy from you is to give 3 pricing options when you quote. Now, right at the start of the process, you need to first of all do one simple thing, and you need to know your client's budget. So 19% of agencies know their client's budget before they quote. This is really important, and there's not enough people doing this. So 4 out of 5 are kind of, I don't know, we're flying a bit blind here. We're issuing proposals and we don't know clients' budgets. I think that's absolutely bonkers, like really bonkers. I spoke to an agency owner really recently, and we were chatting. She was not happy with her conversion rates, and we were looking at the sales process, and she was doing a lot of things right. But when I said you issue a proposal, I said, how do you decide what the value is? She said, I'm kind of guessing a bit. I said, do you not ask the budget? Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. And, if we get a no or we don't know their budget, we kind of guess. And I'm like, well, you don't want to guess. You don't need to guess. There's something you can do in that first conversation that will help you work out at least a ballpark of the client's budget. When a client comes, when you ask them, first of all, ask them about their budget. Most people will respond with something like, I don't know, or I'm just looking for good value. Let me know what you think, right? And so what you need to do is in response to that, to help you put together a proposal is say, look, to help me put together this proposal, I just need a steer from you as to what type of proposal I'm going to put together. Now, we work in broadly 3 pricing categories or 3 project sizes. The first project size is this one, and you always go big. So whatever your biggest project value you've ever done, you go a little bit above that. So if your biggest project value is 100 grand, you say, look, first category we work in is projects between 100 and 120,000, right? Because it's important that you stretch where it is that you want to be and project, give yourself a chance of winning bigger budgets in the future. So we work on projects between 100 and 120 grand, and this is what they look like. We also work on projects between 50 and 100 grand, and this is what those projects look like. And we work on projects between 20 and 50. So our minimum project value is 20 grand. Which of those 3 categories do you think you fall into? Now, I promise you, almost always they will pick one of the categories. They may even go further still and say, well, look, it's that one, but I'd prefer it to be slightly this end of that one. But if after you've given them those 3 categories, broad categories, by the way, we're talking of ranges between 20 and 120 grand here. If they are unable to tell you where they sit in that huge range, then trust me, run away as fast as you can. You do not want to work with these people. If they either don't know their budget or they're not willing to tell you, do you really want to enter into a relationship with them? Let them be someone else's painful client. Go on and find a client that's willing to work with you and collaborate with you. I promise you, when you present those three options, those three ranges, they will pick one, and then you've got a much better chance of presenting your proposal and presenting these three pricing options in a way to get you success. Now, we asked the question in this year's bench press. We looked at the number of pricing options given to clients when presenting a proposal. 47%, you're doing this wrong. If you are only presenting one pricing option to your clients, you are giving them the opportunity to go and seek alternative options elsewhere. Because what we are all looking for when we buy something is to try and work out whether the thing that we are buying is of value, right? And the way we do that as humans is by assessing that thing that you put forward to us against other things, right? So we can assess them by value. Is this good value? And if you want to control that value assessment, you have to give more than one pricing option, because if you don't, they're going to go to a competitor and then they will have an alternative to compare the value. 28% are giving two pricing options. Where we all need to be is to give three, I think three or more, ideally three. 24% are in that category. And you guys get it, right? You guys know exactly why you're doing this and the importance of it, because you know, and certainly with some clever positioning, you can make sure that you are positioning your offering in the right way so the clients buy the most profitable one. Now, I've got a case study here, right? Because a lot of people ask me, well, what should the pricing options be? How should we do this? And all of this is covered in a book, which I'll explain later. But I just wanted to give you this case study because it's one of my favorite case studies. It occurred a few summers ago where I talked to a friend of mine who's an agency owner about this concept. And we just had a brilliant text message exchange all summer. And I just wanted to share bits of that with you. So they had an initial offering, which was £15,000. So their initial offering for clients was a discovery piece at 15 grand. And they used to just say, they used to go in, have the initial meetings, issue a proposal for 15 grand, and it was yes or a no. I told them about the three pricing options, and this is what they did. They took that 15 grand, and first of all, they increased it to 20 grand. And what they did was they then took some things, they then went in with anchored with a really, really high option, a 50 grand option. And they basically thought around that discovery piece, what, if we were to really go to town on this, if we were to just deliver the most amazing experience and add a ton of value, what would that look like? And let's price that highly according to the value. And that was their 50 grand option. What they then did was took their 20 grand option, which used to be their 15 grand option, took a few things out and had a 15 grand option. So those were their three pricing options. Now, what they did, they were clever with that 20 grand. They tweaked it slightly. What they did was they took elements of the 50 grand bit and included them in the 20, but that didn't cost them much to deliver. And that allowed them almost instantly to start selling that 20. Well, basically clients went for that middle option, that 20 grand. And I remember that first text message saying, oh my goodness, I've just sold something that was 15 grand for 20 grand. What they did next was they upped it. They grew in confidence and they changed the three pricing options to lead with 60, then 25, and then 20. And what you notice is that middle option isn't a middle option in terms of exactly the middle in terms of the pricing. It's very closely anchored to that bottom option. So in terms of value, it's only a little bit more, but they're getting quite considerably more. By the way, in the course of this, some people did buy the 60 grand option. What happened was throughout the course of the summer, that price went up and up and up. And by the end of the summer, this is what this was like 3 or 4 months over a period this was happening in. This wasn't years, this was 3 or 4 months. They went from selling something that was 15 grand, that became £60,000, right? And clients were buying something that was 15 grand, were now paying 60 grand for it, 4 times the amount, simply by being smart with the presentation. That was it. That was all that they changed. And I absolutely adored getting those text messages. He was almost disbelieving. He was like, you're not going to believe it. Someone's just bought it for 25, and then 30, and then 35. Oh my God, I've just got 50 grand for it. And it's a shame I wasn't on commission looking back. And I'm not on commission for all of your increases as well, but I love to hear these stories. So if you do this and it works, please tell me, because I get to then share your story with, you know, the next generation of agency leaders, and we can all make our businesses better. Now, this concept is quite a complex one, and I've condensed it into a few minutes. If you want to explore this in more detail, there's a brilliant book on this written by the master, Blair Enns, called Pricing Creativity. You will notice that he is pricing his book based on value, and he's also given 3 pricing options. And if you look at the pricing options and think, bloody hell, I'm not spending $200 on a book. Well, think about the value that's going to add to your business. I promise you, everyone who's read that book absolutely loves it, and it's transformed the way they price and the profit that they make in the business. So I'd encourage you to check it out. Now, 2 more to go. This one is the holy grail: selling value, not time. Certainly reading that book I talked about earlier will help you on that journey. There's no question about it. But I want to give you a couple of practical tips to help you do this. So a lot of the things I'm talking about so far has been around this swapping time for money and trying to swap time for the most amount of money. This gets really interesting where we disconnect time from the price that we charge, and instead focus on the value that we are adding to the customer, and actually charge based on the value that we are adding, not the time that it's spent. Now, to do this, there's a few things that you need to do. So a lot of the stuff that I've talked about earlier definitely applies, and applies really strongly. You need to be focusing on bigger clients, but my goodness, you definitely need to have a specialism and have a niche. It's really hard if you unless you do something very specific, it's very hard to really claim that you can, or to really have a chance of selling based on value rather than the time that you add. So my question to you is this: what do your clients really value? Of all of the stuff that you do, I promise you there'll be some bits that they just love, disproportionately value, would be willing to pay much, 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 much more for. And in terms of the clues where to go looking, this will probably be something that no one else does, or very few people do. It's something that you do particularly well. It's a bit of expertise that you have. It's likely to be towards a more strategic end of your offering rather than, you know, a commoditized thing that you do. But I promise you there'll be something in there that you can start to charge disproportionately highly for because no one else does it. And that really is the game that we're trying to get to, because if you want to get really good at selling based on value rather than time, you need to do something that no one else does. You need to be the best in the world at something. And my question to you, I keep asking this in so many of my presentations, is what can you be the best in the world at? And this is a journey we all need to go on, because by becoming the best in the world, by seeking to be the best in the world at something, it gives us the opportunity to charge what we want. I go back to that case study of the pension comms, or the agency that did pension comms for financial services businesses. They were the only person in the world that did that. They could charge what they want. They were true experts and specialists. What can you be the best in the world at? What do your clients disproportionately value highly? Because then doesn't matter how much time it takes. Only you can do this. Only you can do this to the high standard that that is required, and therefore you can charge what you want. So go exploring how you can sell based on value rather than time, and that will open up a whole new level to you. Everything that I've talked about so far will get you to a certain point, and will get you, by the way, into that top 10%. But if you want to get into the top 1%, you need to work out how to sell based on the value. You need to focus on being the best in the world at something. Now, the final strategy is this. We need to stop discounting. All of us, stop it right now, because all of the hard work in steps 1 to 6 will be undone if right at the last moment clients ask you for a discount and you cave in. And what is so disappointing from this year's bench press report is that 31% said they often give away a discount without getting anything in return. I'm getting annoyed. You can hear I'm getting annoyed at this, because that's nearly a third of agencies do all the hard work, right? And then give away a discount. Now think how hard it is to make money on a project anyway. All the things that need to go right just for you to make money. And if right at the last minute, just before accepting a project, you're giving away some of that hard-earned profit, then it makes it really, really difficult. So far too many are doing it. And when you look at the amounts they're giving away, this is stats direct from bench press. It makes me upset. 23% are giving away up to 5%, 54 up to 10%, 16% are giving away up to 15%, and 7% of agencies are giving away a quarter. Oh my goodness. Like, I'm upset. Let's stop this now. And let's use the bench press report when we're negotiating with procurement departments to say, hey, like, this is what other agencies are charging. We're not an average agency. We are above average, and you should pay us above average rates. Let's be really firm on this. In the report, I talk about some things that you can do if you're really stuck with this and you're forced to take a discount. Look, start talking about risk with clients. Say, sure, I can discount it, but I want some of the reward. So I saw there's a great video online that is a great case study with this. When clients push back on numbers, say, sure, I'll do the work for you for free, but I want 50% of the profits that you're going to generate from this. And you watch the client backtrack, because the client suddenly goes, well, hang on, 50% of the profits, I don't want to give that away. Well, but there needs to be some risk reward balance here. And if you're going to reduce your rates, you need to get something in return. Some things you can get in return are, well, if I reduce my rates, you need to buy more stuff from me. Okay, let's have a bigger contract. If you can extend this from 100 grand contract to 150 grand contract, then maybe we can talk about a small discount. If you can extend this from a 1 to a 2 year deal, then maybe we can talk about a discount. These payment terms, 60 days and invoicing at the end of each milestone. No, let's invoice at the start of the milestone and let's make those 7 days. Then you can have a discount. These are all things that you can use commercially in your toolbox to get something in return if you are literally forced to give away a discount. Other things, there's loads of great marketing things that you can get back in return. Say, well, fine, I'll give a discount, but it's in return for you introducing me to 3 other departments that could use this particular technology. It's in return for you introducing me to 3 marketing managers that you've met along your journey, or in your little black book that we could go and speak to about how we could help them. It's in return for a video testimonial, like something. Get something in return. Stop discounting, because we're just going to undo all of that hard work. So we're going to move on to questions in a second, but I've just got a couple of key points to make at the end of this. Let's just recap on the 7 strategies to increase your pricing. So number 1, just increase your prices and make sure you do it regularly. Make sure you do it. Start off with your prospects and then make sure you go back to your existing clients regularly. We can all just do this tomorrow, just increase our prices. That will only get us so far. We need to win bigger clients with bigger budgets if we want to get into the higher end of agency pricing. This is where it starts to get really interesting. The more specialists we get, the more niche we get, the more we can charge. By the way, the more valuable our agency will be as well. This is what we need to focus on. We all need to move to tiered pricing. Blended hourly rates, or agencies that use blended hourly rates, make less money. There's no other way of putting it. There are exceptions. I know an agency that charge £150 an hour blended hourly rate. They're very good at what they do. They make really good levels of profit. They're the exception. You've seen the stats. On average, if you move to tiered pricing, you will make more profit. Another thing is just really simple way to help you make more profit is to move to 3 pricing options. Make sure you're asking and getting the client's budget beforehand. I'd love to see that 19% increase by much more the next time I ask that question in bench press. And I promise you, I'd love for you to send me those messages that say, hey, I've just sold that thing for 15 grand. I've just sold it for 60. Go on the journey with it and see where it ends up. And go on a journey with this too, selling value, not time. This is a challenge to all of you out there to work out what you can be the best in the world at. And once you've done numbers 1 to 6, we need to make sure we don't do number 7. We need to stop discounting and make sure we get paid for what we are worth.